1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
By the way, if you miss any of our weekday shows in real time, you can always catch up by checking out the podcast of your favorite shows at your leisure. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Follow the leader.
Following the leader.
Oh my God.
Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Santa Claus goes straight to the ghetto. Hitch up your reindeer, go straight to the ghetto. Santa Claus go straight to the ghetto. Fill every stocking you find. The kids are gonna love you so. Leave a toy for Johnny, leave a doll for Mary, leave something pretty for Donnie, and don't forget about Gary. Santa Claus goes straight to the ghetto. Santa Claus.
You are here listening to the Black Pack at KBLA Talk 1580. I am your host, Adrianne Shropshire, and we are trying to get into the Christmas spirit over here because I have not had it. I was telling Andy earlier that I got half my Christmas decorations up. Some of them are on the floor. Some of them are hanging out of the boxes, and we might not make it. I might not get all of them up. But I'm trying to get into the spirit, listening to Christmas carols. I got on my holiday Christmas ornament earrings. So I'm trying to get there. But the days are running out. And speaking of days running out, days before Christmas, the federal government was on the verge of a shutdown. We have breaking news that they were able to pass a bill. But, you know, this is not the functioning of our government is not actually looking that great. And it's not like this is news to anyone when we think about how Republicans in the House ran the House of Representatives over the last period of time. We know that it's been dysfunctional, but particularly when we have kind of an unelected shadow president lurking in the background, essentially pulling the strings or apparently pulling the strings. So a government shutdown would have meant that tens of thousands of government workers would have been forced onto furlough, working on IOUs, even just a temporary shutdown, as folks might remember from times past, would have had dire consequences for federal workers in their families, and not just federal workers, but contractors, businesses in the area that rely on those folks who shop or go into coffee shops, etc. So there's always ripple effects when there's a government shutdown or even the threat of a government shutdown. And you can imagine the stress for workers. So Trump hasn't even taken office yet. He is not the president, even though he is sort of pretending to be at this point. But he and his party are reminding us how unfit, unwilling, and unable they are to govern this country. So instead of using this moment to make sure that the government is funded, to pay bills that were already due, to make sure that disaster relief was delivered to communities that are still reeling for natural disasters, they chose instead to grandstand. And grandstand on nothing, right? Like there was clearly a bipartisan agreement on the table just a couple of days ago. It was negotiated by House Republicans. It was agreed to by both the Senate Dems and Republican Dems. It was on its way to passing to fund the government, but it was thrown out. Right, just 2 days ago, at the insistence of our, unelected new president, Elon Musk, and his sidekick, Vice President Donald Trump, who hopped on social media and whined about having a government spending bill that would do things like fund cancer research for children and support reforms to bring down the cost of prescription drugs, things that apparently they do not like. So they ranted and they raved and they forced Republicans in the House to scrap their bipartisan bill and come up with a new one that would do the things that Trump and Elon Musk wanted to do. So they voted on that bill yesterday. 38 Republicans joined Democrats in defeating that proposal. And so just take a listen to Representative Chip Roy from Texas, who had this to say about his fellow Republicans taking up a new bill after they had already had an agreement on one.
And what are you doing in the same bill? $110 billion unpaid for, because you never have any ounce of self-respect to go out and campaign saying you're going to balance the budget, and then you come in here and pass $110 billion unpaid for. On top of the $200 billion you did for WEP, you guys won't agree with that, but the fact of the matter is $330 billion. Congratulations, you've added to the debt since you were given the majority again on November 5th. It's embarrassing. It's shameful. Yes, I think this bill is better than it was yesterday on certain respects, but to take this bill yesterday and congratulate yourself because it's shorter in pages but increases the debt by $5 trillion is asinine. And that's precisely what Republicans are doing.
So that was a Republican congressmember berating his Republican colleagues on bringing forward a bill that actually is in contradiction to what the Republican Party at least used to say that they were about, which is fiscal responsibility. So that was a Republican member of Congress berating his own members, and to which, the sort of response to that from Donald Trump was to then, of course, threaten to primary Chip Roy if he, because he would call them names as he does, said he was going to primary him for not, being on the bandwagon, being a big enough sycophant. So at the heart of the Musk and Trump demand is the suspension of the debt ceiling. So we've been hearing that. That was one of the demands that they put out, in addition to some ridiculousness around it was too many pages long, and so they needed to reduce the number of pages. Makes no sense. But they want the debt ceiling to be suspended, meaning that the government can't continue to add to the national debt, right? Can't continue to grow the debt. And so why do they need to suspend the debt ceiling? Why is that a thing that they want done? Well, because Trump, if you all remember, in 2017 passed these tax cuts for the richest Americans, right? It was his tax bill. It cut taxes for the wealthy in this country. And that tax bill ends next year. It ends in 2025. So, and he wants to, of course, not only extend those tax cuts to the wealthy folks in the country who were getting them, but he wants to expand them as well, right? He cannot extend and expand those tax cuts if he cannot raise the debt ceiling. If he cannot raise or suspend the debt ceiling, he can't actually increase or extend and expand the tax cuts that he wants to do. That is what is at the heart of what he is trying to do. They would rather do it now, or he wanted to do it now, so that they could blame Joe Biden, right? As opposed to, taking responsibility when they have full control of both branches of Congress, both houses of Congress, and the presidency. They would have rather put it on Joe Biden's term to say, well, look what happened under Joe Biden. He allowed for this. So it's important to understand what it is that they're fighting over and why, right? This isn't about spending, right? It is about, and this is like where the unelected, new president apparently Elon Musk is his job as an unelected person running a fake government entity is supposed to be to say what should be cut and what we should be spending money on. But the reality is that this is about how do they create an environment where their grift is possible, right? Where they are literally stealing from the United States government. And so that's what this is about. So while it isn't the first time that Republicans have played with the nation's purse strings, we're certainly witnessing the lengths that they are willing to go in order to clear the way for their agenda. So a new bill was put forward today. The House, as I said, maybe 30 minutes ago, maybe 45 minutes ago, passed this stopgap spending bill, 366 members to 34, after stripping out all of Trump's demands. Again, the bill will provide funding for the government through March, and then provide disaster relief for those communities that have been hit by natural disasters. And so government shutdown is averted. The government will stay open. Trump did not get what he wanted. But we have to remember that some of those things that were important, the things that I mentioned before, things like funding for cancer research, that Elon Musk demanded that we shouldn't be funding these things and that they needed to be cut out of the original bill, those things still will not be funded. And so it begs the question, and there's a reason why I've been sort of joking about Elon Musk being the president and Trump being the vice president, because it begs the question within the Republican Party of who exactly is in control. Who is the president, or who is going to be the president of the United States when Elon Musk can make a big deal about a spending bill where there was agreement, pressure the Republican members of the House to trash the bill, come up with a new one that they could not get passed, and then put forward another bill that they could get agreement on from Democrats. And Elon Musk says, great job, you're doing a great job, except for it didn't include the stuff that Donald Trump wanted. So Donald Trump actually didn't win, but Elon Musk is saying great job because they did what Elon Musk wanted them to do. So we really need to be asking the question about who is in charge and who, in fact, is going to be running this country. When we come forward, we're going to be joined by Patrice Willoughby, the Chief of Policy and Legislative Affairs at the NAACP, to talk about one of the things that the actual president, who is in charge right now, Joe Biden, is trying to do, and that we talked a little bit about last week. And that is the pardons and sentence commutations that the president has already put forward, and some that many hope that he will be putting forward. So we're going to talk about that when we come forward. This is KBLA Talk 1580. Stay with us.
You're part of the Black Pack with Adrianne Shropshire on KBLA Talk 1580. Starting Monday, January 6th, KBLA Talk 1580 has a new midday lineup.
I'm excited.
Are you ready for Tavis Smiley, Dr. Cornel West, Jesse Jackson Jr., D.L. Hughley, and E. Quarterly Corte back-to-back?
Oh, my God.
Are you really ready for all this smoke?
I'm ready, brother.
Yes, we still have Dominique DePrima in the mornings and Zoe Williams in the evenings, but middays just got lit on KBLA Talk 1580.
We on fire.
All across America, people are talking about our new midday lineup. Starting Monday, January 6th, our KBLA 1580 app downloads are on fire because everybody's going to be tuning in.
Yes, I love you guys. You are the bomb.
Now would be a good time to hit up SMB at KBLA1580.com if you want folks to hear about your business or brand. That's SMB at KBLA1580.com. It's going up in 2025 on KBLA Talk 1580.
It's going up.
That's what I want.
Order for Jennifer C.
Is this my double shot, double cream, double froth, double pump, double whip, double sleeve?
Yeah. Can you handle that much caffeine?
Did you know Discover automatically doubles all the cash back you've earned at the end of your first year?
Oh, really? That's great.
Seriously, did you know Discover automatically doubles all the cash back you've earned at the end of your first year?
Yeah, you just said that.
Did you say I just said that?
Yeah, I'm cutting you off.
I can't have any more? Why not?
You earn, we match. Discover Cashback Match. See terms at discover.com/credit card.
Hey, what are you doing up on the step stool?
About to clean these light fixtures. The whole family's coming over, and if there's even a speck of dust in the house, my abuela will find it.
Here, I got a Swiffer duster to help with that.
A Swiffer what?
A Swiffer duster. It has this cool extendable handle that reaches 6 feet to get high and low, with fluffy dusters that easily trap and lock dust.
So, no more step stool?
No more step stool.
Easily trap and lock dust from hard-to-reach places with the Swiffer duster. Love it or your money back.
$5,000. That's the average amount of money people in the U.S. are now spending on gas in a year. $5,000. That's crazy. If you drive, you have to download Upside, the free app that gives you cash back every time you get gas. That's right. You can earn real cash back with Upside just by buying the gas you're already buying. You can literally start earning cash back today.
I use Upside every time I fill up, and I've already made around $300.
You're putting gas in your car anyway. Why not get real cash back? If you like free money, download Upside.
I'm saving the cash I earn from using Upside to help pay for a vacation later this year.
Download the free Upside app now to earn cash back every time you buy gas. Use promo code SNAP to get an extra 35 cents per gallon on your first tank. You can cash out anytime right to your bank, PayPal, or a gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Upside app and use promo code SNAP for a 35 cents per gallon bonus on your first tank. That's code SNAP for a 35 cents per gallon bonus.
You don't talk to me like that. You don't talk to your mommy like that.
Unlike your mama, we can handle your black talk on the Black Pack with Adrianne Shropshire.
You are listening to The Black Pack, and I'm Adrianne Shropshire, your host. And we are going to, last week we talked a little bit about some of the final acts of President Joe Biden's term. And some of the final acts, there are in many different sectors, right? He's doing stuff on the economy. He just forgave more student loan debt to, I think, more than 50,000 public sector workers. So he's doing many things to sort of close out and cement his legacy. One of those things that he's doing is commuting sentences and pardoning folks. And so I'm really pleased to have Patrice Willoughby, the Chief of Policy and Legislative Affairs at the NAACP, to talk through this with us. Hi, Patrice. Welcome.
Good evening. Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for joining. I wanted to talk to you because there is, there at the end of every presidency, there always feels like there's this big rush to, commute sentences and pardon folks. And I'm never really clear why it happens at the end. And I know that it, that particularly in this administration, some of this happened earlier. But why does this happen? Why is there this sort of push at the end of a presidential term to pardon and commute sentences?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. And I think that if we look at commutations and pardons, we have to actually look at the criminal justice system in totality. And the roots of policing and how policing and the criminal justice system has been weaponized, particularly against Black and brown communities. And so during a presidential term of 4 years, the first couple of years, president is really trying to lay out an agenda and work that agenda through Congress and the federal agencies in order to execute their policy priorities. As a presidential term ends, the presidential pardon power comes into effect because constitutionally, the president is authorized in the Constitution, Article 2, Section 2, to grant reprieves and pardons for federal crimes. And that power is pretty broad, but the Supreme Court has limited to its use as a tool for justice and mercy and for furthering public welfare. So during the course of a presidential term, individuals who believe that their sentences have been wrong or have served disproportionately long sentences, they have the opportunity to petition the Department of Justice, and those petitions are usually evaluated during presidential term, and at the end of the term, when there's no more political pressure, the pardon authority really kicks in.
Right. Okay. And so help me understand the difference between a pardon and a grant of clemency. What are each of those?
Sure.
What are people receiving when they get one of those?
So there are 4 types of clemency. There are pardons, which forgive past crimes where a sentence is completed, and that reduces and removes the legal liabilities from that crime. Then there are commutations, which reduce or remove a current sentence. There's also remission of fines or restitution. So that will relieve a person from having to pay fines or restitution and get them out of financial difficulty. And then there's a reprieve. A reprieve can also be thought of as a pause, and that will temporarily postpone the imposition of a sentence. So in the context of death penalty, for example, a reprieve can also be known as a stay of execution.
Okay. That's really helpful. Thank you. Because we hear terms all the time, and it's not always clear if they're the same thing, if they're different things, and trying to understand, I think, or understanding the differences, I think is helpful. I think it was.
But they're all under the guideline of clemency, and I think that makes it easier if people just say clemency. Yeah.
Okay. So, all right. So, just level setting, right? So, President Biden recently issued this sort of historic grant of clemency, right, by commuting, I think, nearly 1,500 people who were out on, I think, sort of a pandemic era policy of people who were on home confinement. And then there were 39 pardons, I think, issued. And so that clarity now, I understand the difference between those two things. But why was that significant? That set of 1,500 or so sentences that were commuted, and then the 39 pardons. What was significant about that one day sort of?
Well, it was just a huge block of folks. So as of December 12th, he granted a total of 1,621 commutations, which excluded, there were some prisoner swaps and diplomatic exchanges. And during the COVID years, you remember that because people stay in proximity to each other in confinement, there was an effort to take people out of prison environments and to put them into home confinement. And that was to increase health outcomes and to ensure that people didn't catch COVID. And so those folks many of them have been on home confinement since then. And so through the years, though, some of them have been released, and there are studies that show that those folks that have been released are less likely to reoffend than people who receive other types of release, like probation and parole. And so the move has been to commute the sentences for those folks that remain on home confinement because they do not pose a hazard or create any danger to society. More broadly, this is, again, going back to the foundations of what's wrong in the criminal justice system, there are a lot of distortions that have happened that have resulted in Black populations, for example, being 14% of the federal prison population, but 40% of prisoners in that population. And so that goes back over 40 years. If you look at the failed war on drugs, the disparate sentencing between crack and powder cocaine, the focus on cannabis and cannabis-related offenses. Those factors have really caught up a lot of people in the criminal justice system for nonviolent offenses. And so the larger push on clemency is really about justice and ensuring that people are not staying in prison that really should be out. I think it's also... No, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I want to cut you off. I just wanted to, it is, in some ways, the Biden-Harris administration has really prioritized equity, right, across their administration, but also in some ways in the ways that they have chosen to look at this issue as well.
Correct. Absolutely.
I'm sorry. I actually cut you off. You were finishing.
No, I think that because all of the issues of criminal justice and incarceration, and the fact that the United States incarcerates more people than any other country in the Western Hemisphere, and it's, we know that changes in under more progressive administrations, some good changes have happened in sentencing and in the approach to law enforcement in the Obama era and also in the Biden-Harris administration. In the Obama era, there were about 1,927 total people who were granted clemency of some type, and so they granted around 5% of the requests that were made. In the Trump era presidency, that was about 2%. There were only 237 people who received clemency. And also, you have to look at the character. Yeah. Trump ran around touting, his criminal justice reform approach, right, as the reason why Black people should support him. But he only, the differences are extreme here, right? They're stark.
1,900, more than 1,900 under Obama, more than 1,600 over Biden, and 237 under Trump.
Correct.
Yeah.
And he focused a lot on clemency to his allies, to celebrities, and also a handful of other people. And, he stated that he intends on granting clemency to the January 6th cohort. I mean, the people who tried to overthrow the government.
Right,
so,
that we all
it's
watched.
Pretty stark.
Right, that we all watched do exactly that. So I want to talk a little bit about when we come forward, what more needs to be done, because I think that everyone thought that was a good start. There were some controversies in there that maybe we'll talk about as well. But I want to talk about what more needs to be done. What should we be looking at, and also what can people do to make sure that we get some additional relief for folks who should have it. So more with Patrice Willoughby of the NAACP when we come forward.
More of the Black Pack with Adrianne Shropshire on KBLA Talk 1580 when we come forward.
I'm Amber Payton with 4 things you should know from BIN News. Luigi Mangione is being held at the same notorious New York City jail as Sean Diddy Combs and is being represented by the same lawyer. Mangione was taken to the Metropolitan Detention Center after he was extradited from Pennsylvania to face murder charges in the shooting death of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson on a Midtown sidewalk. On day 2 of the Teamster strike against Amazon, the company claims it's minor, involving just 1% of its workforce, and protests are only happening in a few cities, not widespread strikes. Big Lots is beginning its going out of business sale at all of its remaining locations. The retail chain has already closed more than 400 stores since filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, and less than 1,000 are still open. And Delaware's congressional delegation has asked President Biden to posthumously award the Medal of Freedom to attorney Louis Redding, Delaware's first Black lawyer, and Judge Colin Seats for their roles in pioneering school integration. Get BIN News on demand 24/7 at BINnews.com.
Santa Clarita, 14 northbound slowing, leaving the 5 all the way to Soledad Canyon Road. It's also a tough on the 405 southbound. Delays in West LA from Sunset Boulevard and stretches all the way to the 605. Northbound slowing, well, that starts all the way out of Irvine. It's crowded from Irvine Center Drive as you continue all the way to the 110 freeway. More slowing ahead in Culver City from Venice Boulevard, and stretches all the way to the 5 merge in Sylmar. And out of Calabasas, 101 southbound. Delays from Lost Hills all the way to the 170, 134 split, and ahead in Hollywood from Sunset into downtown Los Angeles.
New deals just dropped at Lowe's. Get up to 75% off select holiday decor clearance. Plus, save with weekly deal drops on appliances, tools, and more. Valid 12/19 through 12/25 while supplies last. Selection varies by location.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The two black head coaches in the 12-team college football playoffs have first-round games beginning tonight. Notre Dame coach Marcus Freeman is leading his team against Indiana tonight. Freeman, age 38, is in his third season at Notre Dame. Penn State's James Franklin also has a home game in the first round. Penn State takes on Southern Methodist Saturday morning at 9 a.m. Pacific time. Franklin, age 52, is in his 10th season at Penn State. Freeman and Franklin are attempting to make history. No black coach has led a school to an NCAA Division I national title in football. 7th-ranked USC is at number 4 at UConn tomorrow in a marquee game for women's college basketball. The game features two of the premier stars in women's hoops, USC sophomore Juju Watkins and UConn senior Paige Beckers. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
If you're not following KBLA Talk 1580 on all of our socials, then you're missing out. Download our app and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and on the web at KBLA 1580.
That's right.
Again, you can find all of our socials at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
By the way, if you miss any of our weekday shows in real time, you can always catch up by checking out the podcast of your favorite shows at your leisure. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Got your beer.
Keep following the leader.
Oh my God. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Our daughter Jessie loves playing detective.
A clue.
But since we discovered she has sensitive skin, we've been playing detective too.
We thought the problem was our puppy.
But it was actually our old detergent.
Aha.
So we switched to Tide Free and Gentle. Tide cleans better than the leading competitive free detergent, and it doesn't leave behind irritating residues.
Plus, Tide Free and Gentle has no dyes or perfumes, so it's gentle on her skin.
Case closed.
If it's got to be clean, it's got to be Tide Free and Gentle.
I occasionally have nerve discomfort in my hands, so the things I love to do
Let's play something, Grandma.
became difficult as I got older.
If you have occasional stabbing and burning in your hands and feet, try Nervive Nerve Relief. Nervive's clinically studied dose of alpha-lipoic acid reduces occasional nerve discomfort in as little as 7 days with continued daily use. Say yes to healthy nerves with Nervive Nerve Relief. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Environmental justice is racial justice.
Environmental justice is social justice.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminds you, when we fight, we win. The Youth Justice Coalition is challenging America's addiction to incarceration and discrimination. YJC works to dismantle policies leading to mass incarceration, law enforcement violence, and the school-to-prison pipeline. Their approach, transformative justice, community intervention, free LA high school, legal defense, and system monitoring. YJC promotes safety without relying on prisons. Their goal, prevent system contact and help people exit the system through direct action, advocacy, and education. Want to get involved or need help? Call 323-235-4243. That's 323-235-4243. Join YJC in creating change. When we fight, we win. KBLA Talk 1580, your voice for justice. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Let's get back to more of the Black Pack with Adrianne Shropshire right now on KBLA Talk 1580.
Okay, we are back and continuing our conversation here on the Black Pack with Patrice Willoughby, the chief of policy and legislative affairs at the NAACP. So, Patrice, we sort of got into, or maybe the lead into this conversation about clemency started when the president pardoned his son, Hunter Biden. And there was lots of controversy around that with, people both, in for many different reasons, both because folks thought that he also then needed to be pardoning others. some because folks thought that he was wrong to do it. I'm not among those who think that. But the NAACP, I think, also joined, more than 200 national organizations calling for President Biden to go further and to do more. And so I think we know that and there's, again, he did then do the 1,500 commutations and the 39 pardons. There was some controversy in there. I talked last week about the Kids for Cash judge who, there was lots of consternation about why he would have been someone who would have been in that mix. But I think the part of the question, though, was when we think about, or the question I have for you is when we think about, what more can Biden do, or what areas should he be looking at to do more? What are those? What should people expect from the Biden administration now?
Sure. So, I think that with the administration's focus on equity, this is likely to be a focus of the administration. And so some concrete examples of that, our criminal laws and practices have changed. In 28, Congress reduced the crack powder sentencing disparity and passed the First Step Act. And that narrowed the sentencing enhancements for crack. Crack and powder cocaine have the same chemical composition. However, the sentences that were imposed on crack were much higher than for powder cocaine, and that negatively affected the Black community. The First Step Act narrowed those disparities from 18 to 1, and then Attorney General Merrick Garland issued a charging memo from the Department of Justice that equalized the sentencing 1-to-1. So that's really important because that means that it's eliminated that inequitable consideration of crack and powder cocaine. Right. We also know that there are new ways to safely reduce prison terms. Retroactively changing sentences and letting people out of prison does not increase future criminal behavior. So there are studies that show that in the criminal justice research. And then we also know that because of so many of these cases are related to drug offenses, the science surrounding addiction and trauma have also greatly expanded. And we know that addiction is a part of brain science and recovery is possible. So there's a role of trauma and self-destructive behavior, and there are therapies for addressing that behavior, and incarceration should not be, the first tool that's used. Yeah. So, holistically, I think that's, those are some of the tools that can be used. In the immediate, this administration has a number of weeks to go. And so there are many, many organizations. The NAACP has really been focused on 7,000 people who have already had their petitions to the U.S. Pardon Attorney at the Department of Justice vetted. And they are simply awaiting for the president to check the box and to commute and give them clemency on their sentences.
So that's 7,000 folks who basically their paperwork is sitting on a stack, just waiting.
They're sitting in a stack.
Yeah.
Yep. There are other groups of people that advocacy organizations have identified as well. So, for example, there is a press on Commute the Road, people who have received death penalty sentences. There is Win with Black Women as a large network of women who are engaged on policy advocacy across the country, has focused on women who are in the federal prison population. We had a call on that this past Sunday because there are about 10,300 women who are in federal prison, and that's 7% of the federal prison population. A lot of those women, just like in a lot of the federal prison population in general, are older. 20% of women in federal prison are 50 or older. And so, one of the uses of the presidential pardon authority is for compassionate release. And those are really good reasons for bringing people home to their families.
Yeah. So it really is how we should think about this. I often think about like individual people, right? And that's the 7,000 whose, applications are sitting on a desk somewhere. I often think about the individual people, and will they, pardon, one or two or three or four people out of that 7,000. I think what you're suggesting is that there's a way for the Biden administration to pardon or give clemency, right, for some form of clemency to whole groupings of people, right? Both those who are already, just waiting for the approval. I know I've heard about the folks who have been advocating to clear the row. Clearing everyone on death row, because we know that Trump, allowed for the execution of a significant number of people when he in his first term, and certainly will go that route again. And then it sounds like women, sort of compassionate release for older women. I think I also saw recently about women who have suffered from sexual abuse inside of prisons, and an effort, groups advocating for them to also get relief so that they can not be in harm's way. But it really is like there are groupings, whole groups of people who you're suggesting the administration could be providing this kind of relief to, and not just sort of individual high profile names or celebrities like happened under the Trump administration.
Oh, absolutely, because here's a concrete example. So in 2018, Congress passed and Trump signed into law the First Step Act.
Yes.
The First Step Act was focused on, equalizing some of the crack and powder cocaine sentencing, and also sentencing reform. But it was not made retroactive. So that means that there are lots of people who are in federal prison who would have received a shorter sentence if that law was in effect when they were sentenced. Very easy to identify, and many of them are part of that group of 7,000. And retroactive application of the First Step Act, that would reduce the average sentence length for those people by between 5 and 7 years.
Wow.
So the president can retroactively modify those sentences, so those people, their sentences are aligned with our most current approaches to federal sentencing guidelines. And that would go far as well to help people get home to their families.
Yeah. So there's a lot. I mean, you said earlier the president has a few more weeks. There's actually quite a lot that he could do, both in terms of their sort of focus on equity, sort of racial justice in the criminal justice system. There's a lot more that they can do. Okay, so when we come forward, Patrice, we're going to continue this conversation, and I want to talk a little bit about what people can do, right? So if folks want to be helpful to make sure that we're pardoning, these whole groupings of people, or getting the sentences commuted for whole groupings of people, what action can folks take? So when we come forward, you were listening to the Black Pack on KBLA Talk 1580.
You're part of the Black Pack with Adrianne Shropshire on KBLA Talk 1580.
Add confidence to every holiday adventure and get it done with a rugged and capable Chevy truck or SUV. Now during Red Tag, get 0% APR financing for 36 months on select Chevy models when you finance with GM Financial. Chevrolet. Together, let's drive.
Offer available on all 2025 Equinox and 2024 Equinox EV, Blazer EV, and Silverado EV models. Monthly payment is $27.78 for every $1,000 you finance. Example down payment is 26.8%. You must finance with GM Financial. Some customers may not qualify. Not available with lease and some other offers. Take new retail delivery by 1/2/25.
Workers in California cut and polish man-made stone for countertops, showers, and more. Without proper protections, workers breathe in harmful dust from the artificial stone material, which puts them at risk of developing silicosis. California employers are required to protect their employees from harmful silica dust by providing proper equipment and training. Stop dusty and deadly practices. Learn more at worksafewithsilica.org. This is a message from Cal OSHA.
If you love to travel, Capital One has a rewards credit card that's perfect for you. With Venture X, earn unlimited double miles on everything you buy and turn everyday purchases into extraordinary trips. Plus, receive premium travel benefits like access to over 1,300 airport lounges where you just check in and chill out. Open up a world of possibilities with Capital One. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. Lounge access is subject to change. See CapitalOne.com for details.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. The Autopsy Initiative provides a second autopsy free of charge for victims' families who have lost their loved ones due to a police-related death. The services offered through the initiative include the completion of a second autopsy, disclosure of preliminary findings, and a final autopsy report. A police-related death is when an individual is harmed by police officers using deadly force, which results in an individual's death. Police-related death includes in-custody deaths, including those that arise during contact with law enforcement officers during arrest, pursuit, booking, transport, or incarceration. The Autopsy Initiative has a team of board-certified pathologists on call. An autopsy request may be completed by anyone with a close relationship with the victim, which may include the victim's spouse, partner, relative, close friend, or lawyer. To request a free second autopsy for a victim of police violence, please visit knowyourrightscamp.com. That's knowyourrightscamp.com. Then click on Autopsy, then click on Request. At KBLA, we believe in justice for victims of police violence. We say their names, and we don't black down. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
You don't talk to me like that. Don't talk to your mommy like that.
Unlike your mama, we can handle your black talk on the Black Pack with Adrianne Shropshire.
We are continuing our conversation with Patrice Willoughby, the Chief of Policy and Legislative Affairs at the NAACP, about what more can be done by the Biden administration in terms of providing clemency for folks who are in the criminal justice system. And Patrice, you sort of laid out, and I appreciate both the sort of laying out the categories of folks that it's important to be in consideration as the Biden administration sort of winds down for this kind of relief. So he's got about a month left before the actual transition happens, and so. Obviously they are focused on a bunch of other stuff, right? As they're trying to solidify and cement his legacy and, I think project out what his legacy is or was, how history is going to define the impact that he made on the country. And certainly one of those legacy pieces is going to be about equity, right? And racial equity in particular. And again, we see that across the administration. So as folks are, trying to keep up on, what he's doing or what he isn't doing, or want to make sure that, their voice is heard in this process around clemency. What are some things that folks can do? What are you all advising your members or other advocacy groups that that have folks that they can mobilize? What are things that people should or can be doing in this moment?
Sure. So first of all, there's a large and growing list of stakeholders who have been calling for clemency, and that includes labor organizations like the AFL-CIO and SEIU. There are faith leaders like the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, also progressive and civil rights and criminal justice organizations like the NAACP, the Urban League, the Leadership Conference, the ACLU, and many others. There are organizations like Death Penalty Action, Just Leadership USA, the Episcopal Church, People's Coalition for Safety and Freedom. I mean, these are just some of the organizations. So if you are a member of a membership organization, if you are a member of a faith community, if you are a member of a community group, I would suggest that, get together with your membership and send a letter to the president at the White House, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue Northwest, Washington, D.C., 20500. Time is of the essence to do that. There's also a public email address, which is comments@whitehouse.gov. And there's also the switchboard, which is 202-456-1111. Maybe you can mobilize a call-in day with your membership to call the switchboard and launch calls into the White House asking for clemency for these groups of people. There are, for example, under the First Step Act, there are 3,000 people that remain under home confinement that was enacted under COVID. And there have been repeated efforts by Republicans in the Senate to return those people to prison when they don't present a safety risk. For people who were sentenced before 1987, now 1987, we're talking about quite a while ago, but those people are getting up in age. They were left out of the First Step Act. They're not eligible for compassionate release. That is a group that if I were a member of my local AARP or some other organization, I would get together with my older people and say, hey, those folks should not continue to be in prison. If you're a member of a mental health organization or you do any type of activations around that, cannabis transport or people who are known as drug mules, we know from the history of the war on drugs that lots of times people who are lower income and women have gotten roped into acting as a drug mule, and they have ended up in prison. They should be, should have advocacy on their behalf to get out of prison as well. So there are, I would say, activating and mobilizing with people who are aligned in the same lens as you. It's really important, over the next week or two to really, as soon as possible, launch in those emails, letters, and phone calls to let your voice be heard.
So I want to just reiterate what those things are, because I think that there is, the thing that we need to continue to remember is that Joe Biden is still president. He can still do things, and we still have power. And so we need to use that power. And so I wanted the three things that you said is send a letter to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue Northwest, which is the White House. You can send an email if snail mail is not your thing to, I think you said comments@whitehouse.gov.
Yes.
Comments@whitehouse.gov. You can send an email. You can call the switchboard 202-456-1111, and you can voice your concern and your advocacy that way. I think the other thing that you said that was great is get together with your people, right? Like more voices is powerful. One voice is powerful. More voices than that is more powerful. And so sending a letter from your institution or organization, or getting those folks to send letters or emails or make phone calls. I think the thing you said, do a phone bank. If this is a thing that matters to you and your organization or your friends, right, your family, your faith institution, have folks get together and do this advocacy work in these next few days, really.
Absolutely. And I think that, going forward as well, it's critically important for all of us to pay attention to criminal justice policy, because policy makes a huge difference. We ended up in this situation with this disproportionate impact on the Black community because laws were put in place that have a harder impact on the Black community than they have on other populations. And so we have to watch and remain engaged with our local, state, and federal government to ensure that criminal justice policy becomes more fair, and so that we can continue to make progress.
Right, and so that we're not waiting for this sort of final last-ditch effort to get relief or make things right for folks who should not be serving these kinds of extraordinary sentences, and in some cases shouldn't be in federal prison at all. Are there other issues in these final days that you all at the NAACP are working on to try to push forward the administration do beyond the clemency requests that you all are putting forward? Other things that people should know about that you all are working on?
Well, we have been working since before this administration on student debt relief, and I heard you making comments about that earlier. We were very, very happy to hear today that there was additional student debt relief granted for public service loan forgiveness. That's critically important because education is such an important value in the Black community. Black women are more likely than any other group to have student loans. And in many cases, those loans have been predatory and have captured people in debt cycles. So that's one. And we also, one directly related to criminal justice is the menthol ban, which, we have supported the ban on menthol because that is the only flavor of tobacco that has not been banned because it has disproportionate, targeting by industry on the Black community. Mm-hmm. There's this false narrative out there that the menthol ban would have affected individuals, but it would not. That was false. It was only to affect companies. Right. Because, there was some scare tactics going on that people would be arrested for selling loosies. Right. Completely false.
Right.
So, we've got our eyes on those things.
Well, those are important, and I'm glad that you all are out there fighting all the way to the end to make many of these things real. They're going to impact so many people in our community. So, Patrice Willoughby, Chief of Policy and Legislative Affairs at the NAACP, thank you so much for joining us and for helping us understand the clemency issue. I appreciate you. More when we come forward.
Adrianne, thank you so much.
Of course. More when we come forward. This is the Black Pack on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Amber Payton with 4 Things You Should Know from BIN News. President Biden has announced $4.2 billion in student loan forgiveness for 55,000 public service workers through the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, helping Americans save and pursue their goals. The St. Paul, Minnesota City Council is overriding Black Mayor Melvin Carter's budget vetoes, restoring a $1.9 million renovation of council offices funded by the American Rescue Act. Rudy Giuliani is